Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Thank you so much to my two guests again today. So I've had a couple of these now with two guests. So this is Archie and Elina. And Archie is Garret's mother and Elina is Garret's sister. And so we're here today to talk about their amazing son/brother, Garret. So whoever would like to start talking just about Garret and kind of who he was as a kid and as a person, I'd just love to hear about him.
Sure, I can start. Thank you, Marcy, for having us here. So Garret, there's a lot to say.
Yeah.
In his 2.5 years of life, Garret really brought a lot of life to a lot of people. I will say even before he was born, when I was pregnant with Garret, I knew he was going to be a mover and a shaker just by all of the movement when I was pregnant with him. And sure enough, when he was born, he actually was an emergency C-section. He had the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck. So he was taken out very quickly. He came out kicking, screaming, and punching, and he never stopped, honestly. He just was a very, joyful, loud, chatty young kid. You always knew Garret was in the room wherever he was, whether he was as a toddler or as he got older. He just never stopped talking, always just shared stories, was interested in talking to people from a very young age. I know our neighbors, when he was growing up in our neighborhood, would constantly be in awe of his vocabulary for such a young age. And he took after his mom size-wise. He was on the tinier side, but he was the biggest personality, I will say. And he was able to pick up multiple languages as a young kid. Like Spanish just came very natural to him, even though we don't have any Spanish-speaking people in our families. I'm of Indian descent and my husband's of Italian descent. But he just had a tendency towards language, which allowed him actually to do a study abroad when he went to college in Spain. He just loved to talk to people. He was a people person all the way through. Also very faithful. He always had questions about God as a young child. He was very curious. And he actually, of all of us, I would say, was probably the most religious. He was the one that was devout, went to church every day. I had the kids baptized. They were Catholic by religion. During the pandemic, he never missed, as far as from what he told me, he never missed an online church service he did with this one friend. Just really a very multifaceted, multi-interesting child who then became later on to be an amazing young man, 22 and a half years old when we lost him. And the impact he's left in that short period of time has really reached ripples effects. And I keep hearing more stories about my son, which are just amazing in that he just was always very inclusive. He loved to help people. And just really a proud mom from what I knew and the things that I continue to find out.
I know. It's such just a joy when you do find those little nuggets of things that you didn't know before, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I've thought that. I was thinking that a year ago for sure. I was like, when we hit the 2-year anniversary of Andy's being gone, I thought I don't have any new memories of Andy for 2 years. And so I actually went online and asked people to send stories of Andy that I didn't know, that I hadn't heard before. And it was just so beautiful because it was like I was getting a few new memories, like even though they weren't my own memories, but to hear things shared about him that I didn't know before was just so beautiful. Such a beautiful thing, a gift.
It's a new gift. Exactly.
So Elina, why don't you talk about Garret as a brother?
Yeah. So I'm 3 years younger than Garret. So I was definitely made me tougher growing up. But I think even from when I was little, I tried to always keep up with him. I always wanted to do what he was doing. I'd say he had the connection that we had. Had a lot of intuition about like even me. I think before I was born, like he knew that I was a girl. Like no question, not like is it a brother, is it a sister? It was like he was telling people that I was a girl. And then up until my freshman year of college, the first day I moved in, he was like, "Oh, you're not staying here." And I was like, "Yes, I am. Like, I like it here. Like, I know people here. Like, it's close to the beach." Like, he was like, "Oh, no, you're not staying here. Like, you're going to leave within the year." And I would fight him on it. And here I am. I left that year. But yeah, it was honestly, it was a blessing, I think, to grow up as close as Garret and I were. I'm really thankful for that. And that was also, she would make sure that we had that time to spend together as we were growing up. Like it was always days that it was just Garret and I, and things that it was just us, which I really liked. Definitely made me tougher, definitely made me stronger. Definitely, we would fight a lot. Yeah, a lot.
My.
But we were pretty opposite in the things we liked and the things we did. We both played sports growing up, which was also a big rivalry. Like he played soccer when he was little, and I played soccer up through high school. And he would always tell me that he could beat me, that it wasn't that hard. So like it was always like that sibling rivalry. But as we got older, it was like he was hanging out with all of my friends with me, and I hung out with all of his friends with him. So that also, after we passed, was a big blessing to know all of his friends already, to be comfortable with them, to have already hung out with them. It was really helpful. So there was already that familiarity with them.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, from what I know, he talked pretty fondly of me to his friends. There was a few times where he did tell me that he would tell people that I was the meanest person that he knew, which, you know what, from a younger sister perspective, I'll take it. But
yeah,
he also definitely was a motivation for me. Like I always wanted to keep up with him. I always wanted to, if he got a good grade, I needed a better grade. I mean, we're 3 years apart, so obviously he's taking a lot harder classes. But like as soon as he got a job, or he was told he needed to get a job, I wanted a job. Like I wanted to be even with him. Like if he could do something, I needed to be able to do the same thing. Whether it was when we were little, or I think even this past year before he passed, I always wanted to be right there with him. But yeah, he definitely shaped my faith. I mean, he chose to go to Catholic high school. We went to public school through middle school. Then he chose to go to a Catholic high school, and I wasn't going to go. I was back and forth. And then he would take me to church with him. He'd take me to confession. And after that, I was like, you know what? Like, I think this is what I want also. And that also, I think, made us a lot closer. He was a senior when I was a freshman. So that was helpful. We also lost a close friend to suicide when I was a freshman. He was a senior. So unfortunately, that also brought us, unfortunately, that brought us closer as well, to kind of deal with that together for each other. So I'd say we're closer than most siblings. Yeah. Like to me, it's weird when people are like, "Oh yeah, I don't hang out with my brother. I don't hang out with my sister." Like that's like weird to me. So,
yeah. It seems so sad.
Yeah, I'm definitely blessed that Garret was my older brother. Is my older brother.
Yeah, and talk a little bit about what he all did in college, because you had mentioned that before we started recording, as to just kind of how active he was and how many people he knew when he went to school, and it was in Delaware.
Yeah. He went to University of Delaware, and he had just graduated May of 2020. And during that 4 years, he really, he made the most of his time there. He was involved in a lot of activities, from just even being a student tour guide. By the time he was a sophomore, knew he wanted to go to law school, and he ended up getting a full ride, actually, a full scholarship to Delaware Law School. And he was the president of his fraternity. He really took that to the next level. He actually made that fraternity. He was the founding father while he was president, and he actually chartered the fraternity at that school, which means it was recognized even further. They won a bunch of awards. I think they got one of the highest GPAs the semester or the year that he was president. He was the second president ever of that fraternity at University of Delaware. Beta Theta Pi, I'm going to shout out to the fraternity guys.
Very good.
He really loved being a leader, always a leader from a young child. From like when he was a toddler, when he was in preschool, he was the leader of the group, and he loved being a leader. I think because he was tiny, it gave him a sense of power.
Yeah.
But that was also something I wanted the kids to have as they got through college, is the leadership experience, leadership skills, and he really took it to the next level. And he also was part of the Hellenic Society at University of Delaware. He was a student ambassador. I'm probably missing some things. Board. He was on the appellate board, so he was part of the student conduct. And if there were students that were in trouble, he would be on the board to determine what type of punishment they would have. So he really did a lot. Plus, he's very social. So if you met Garret, you didn't forget him, even if you just met him for 5 minutes. Very social. I know one of his good friends had said they would walk to class together, and they would have to build in extra time because Garret would see all these people he would know and stop to talk to. So by the time they would get to class, sometimes they were late. So they had to actually build in extra time. Just a very personable kid, loved everybody.
Very inclusive.
Very, very inclusive. I'm Indian, my husband's Italian. And so he was always aware that he was a little bit different. And he would always be aware that if somebody was feeling isolated or was not feeling part of the group, he would make sure he would go over and talk to them and say, would you like to come sit with us? Or, what are you doing? Do you want to, would you like to be part of our group? Or, you want to go out later with my friends and I. So it was just his mindset from a young child was that open inclusion type of mindset. He didn't like people to feel alone. No. And I think that really helped him connect people. He connected his high school friends with his college friends. And we're very grateful that they all stay in touch with us. And they're all like even closer now. They've been the past year really been here for us. They've been here for Elina. We had a celebration of his life on his 1 year passing, and we had an amazing turnout at the house. We planted a tree for honor. So he just really, the impact for his short time on earth is very high.
Yeah.
And it's just,
that's why I wanted you to really go into that, because it really, I think, is nice for people to hear just a little bit more about him and kind of who he was as a person. I mean, he was an impressive young man, that's for sure.
And to speak on the inclusion, one of my favorite stories of Garret is we didn't learn this until after he had passed away, but his sophomore year of college, he went to a study abroad, and he went to Spain, and he went with his best friend at the time. So he was comfortable. He knew the language perfectly. And there was one girl who was actually forced by her parents to go. She didn't really know anybody. She didn't really want to do it, but her parents wanted her to do it. Mm-hmm. And Garret, at the airport before they left to go to Spain, realized that she was sitting by herself, left his friends, went and sat with her, and sat with her on the plane, sat with her on the bus ride, and pulled her in to their group. And she said because of it, she had such an amazing experience because Garret made her feel included, and Garret made her feel comfortable, and Garret made her feel wanted. And I think that pretty much embodies Garret.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and that's such a beautiful thing to learn too. And that's when you were describing the whole thing, I was thinking he was making her feel wanted. She was feeling wanted. And so I'm glad that's how you ended it, because that is so important to feel like you're wanted and welcomed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think he tried to make everyone that he encountered feel like that. Even in high school, he was friends with the jocks, he was friends with the theater kids, he was friends with we had a film class, and he was friends with all of the film kids. He was literally had so many groups of friends. Everyone knew who he was, and everyone wanted to be friends with him. He was in so many different groups, which I think is rare. I feel like you're usually on the sports side of things or on the creative and art side of things, and he was really in both.
Well, especially in high school, I think you kind of get pigeonholed into one or the other. You're a nerd, you're a jock, you're in one of these little categories, but there isn't a lot of fluctuation and movement in those. So
It definitely broke that mold.
Yeah.
yeah. So why don't you talk now about what happened to Garret?
Sure. So Garret came home to visit us August 13th for the night. And he was supposed to start law school on August 17th. And he came home for the night. We spent a lovely day together on August 14th, that Friday. And we went to a girlfriend of mine's house for dinner. Actually, probably Garrett's first friends, really, that they made when they were very young. His mother and their mother and I became very good friends through Garrett and her daughter and her son, twins. And we went to their house for dinner, and was a very nice evening. And he set off on the road to go back to his apartment in Delaware. We live in New Jersey. And he was driving on a turnpike, which connects Delaware to New Jersey. And it was probably about 9:30 p.m. when he left. And like he always did, he would call another good friend of his, and talk on the phone, hands-free, of course, always safe. Garret definitely was the safest kid that we knew. He drove probably like my grandmother, very slow driver, very cautious. And we got a phone call while we were at my girlfriend's house that from his friend that he was talking to, and she thought that he had gotten into an accident. She had heard a noise through the phone. And so my husband and I quickly got on to the road that Garret was traveling on, and we happened to see a state trooper. And my husband said, "Could you find out if there was an accident further down towards Delaware? We just got alerted that there was an accident, that our son might have been in an accident." Sure enough, there was. And as we were driving down the turnpike, I was trying to call his phone. There was no answer. And then that state trooper called my husband back and said, yes, there was a life-threatening accident your son was involved in, and just go right to the hospital. Don't even bother going to the accident site. So we went to the hospital, and unfortunately Garret didn't make it. And so his car became disabled on the turnpike. There was a tire that blew, and a truck hit his car while he was stalled on the turnpike. And so we got to the hospital. He didn't make it.
Did he make it? Did they bring him to the hospital, or did they not even bring him to the hospital?
They did bring him to the hospital.
Yeah, he was brought to that, and I think that they tried to work on him for about an hour, and he pretty much was gone on impact. Which is kind of, we don't think he suffered. We don't think he felt anything. To be honest, I don't even really think he knew what was going on. I don't think he had time to process any of it. It seems like it happened so
pretty quickly. That part of the turnpike is a higher speed limit, and apparently there's not a lot of lighting there in that part of the roadway. So I guess when his car became stalled, the truck apparently didn't see him and hit the car. So, and it was a box truck. So and my son was driving a sedan. So the impact was pretty high. It sounds like things happened very quickly. I haven't been able to read the police report or anything yet. It's just still.
Has it been released, the police report, or not?
Yes. Yeah. So he left.
I never have read Andy's. And he died. Well, and just to the audience who might not realize this, so Garret died on August 14th this last year. My Andy died on August 15th, and that was 3 years ago. So we share that in common on this being a very, very difficult time of the year. And, just to have that, those days be so tough. But we have a copy, and I can't read it. So
we do too. We have a copy as well. There's certain details that we did find out about afterwards, which we saw Garret in the hospital. So I had an idea.
Not, but my parents did.
Yeah. My husband and I drove right to the hospital. So we saw him, and this is the shock. So we knew. the severity, obviously. They told us they tried to work on him for about an hour and they just couldn't. So it was, thinking back, it's just something that never leaves you. You know, you're not supposed to see your child like that. I'm sure you totally relate to that.
I totally relate to that. I honestly, I mean, the image of them doing CPR is one that will be with me forever. And I hate that it's that way, but it is.
I actually wasn't with them. I was at a friend's house. We had all had dinner at our family friend's house, and my boyfriend and I left to go to our friend's house. A few of my friends were leaving for college that week, so it was like the last kind of thing we were going to do together. And even on the way there, so Garret left our town probably at 9:30, 9:45, and I had gone back home to change, and then I had left, and the accident happened, we think, around 10:33. And at 10:35, like, I looked at my boyfriend and I was like, something's wrong. I was like, I don't know what's wrong. I have a really bad feeling. I do have diagnosed anxiety, but I was like, this is different. Like, this is like, I was like, I don't know, but something happened or something's had a bad feeling. And he was kind of just like, oh, okay, like, we're just going to our friend's house. Like, we'll be home in the morning. Like, everything's fine. And I actually kind of got a thought like, oh my God, I need to call Garret. And I was like, but you know what? He's driving. Like, I don't want him to pick up the phone. And then it wasn't until probably 11:30 when they were getting to the hospital that my mom called me. And in that moment, like, I just knew, like, I knew he was gone. Like, it was just that they had called me and told me that he got in an accident. I didn't know how bad it was. And I just, like, I knew, like, I got the phone call and I started to cry and it got really, like, overwhelmed. And I had walked outside of my friend's house and my boyfriend came after me and my friend, and I was like, he's gone. Like, he's gone. He's gone.
Yeah. Wow. You really did have, I mean, and you to the point where you probably could have even said, I know he's gone and I know what time it happened. Right. I mean, you like,
and that was just the call of, like, he was in an accident. So it was probably another hour or so until my mom had called me back, and I had actually given my phone to my boyfriend. I was like, I was just a mess. And he had answered, and he was the one that was like, he didn't make it. And I got on the phone with my mom, but it was almost like I had already known. So it was like this phone call is like, I knew now. Like, I just had a feeling, like. And my friends were like, we don't know how bad it is. Like, he could be fine. Like, he could be okay. Like, it could have been minor. And I was like, no. That's
well, and I feel like because of that feeling that you had at 10:35, you knew. I mean, you just knew.
Yeah. And
whether that, who knows how that happens or why that happens or why God gives us those little insights sometimes, but
yeah.
Yeah. And as we were driving down, as we were getting more information from the state trooper, and I was calling Garret's phone to get in touch with him, what was going through my mind is, he's starting law school Monday. Obviously, that's going to be delayed. It sounds like it's that accident, life-threatening. But as we were getting closer to the accident, when it was about an hour drive, as we were driving towards to the hospital, you just kind of the worst case scenario did go through my head. My husband had said the same thing. He's like, I don't think he probably made it from what we were told. We were ultimately told that the car was hit by a box truck. And because they used the word life threatening, it was obviously it was
really bad. Yeah.
Right. So when I couldn't get in touch with them, it just really, to Alina's point of just getting that feeling, I think as a mom, you just get that feeling and you just kind of know. But of course, we're driving is, trying not to drive too fast, but also trying to drive, knowing that we're driving to see our son, and we didn't know what to expect. But I kind of thought I knew what I was going to expect. Then when we got,
although it's funny because I don't think your head wants to let yourself go there though either, right? Because I don't know. I think to me, you just keep going back to, but we were just talking. He was just at soccer practice. He was just right. So you have those things going through your head too. So even though you, in some ways, you're like, but other ways you think we were just at dinner. We were just at dinner, right?
And I mean, he had driven to Delaware how many times? I mean, this was like he had been there 4 years. We have like a little BMW that we actually got from her dad that's been to Delaware, and it's a small car and it's made there no problem. Like, it's like he's been there a million times. Like, this is just a routine thing at this point. Like, he goes back to school, and it was like, and I think I actually read something a while ago that was like, when you like are texting someone or calling someone, then they don't answer, and it's like that split second of like, oh my God. But for most people, then they call back or then they text back, and it's like, okay, like we had that moment, but everything's fine. And that we didn't ever get that call back. Like, we didn't ever get that text. So it was like that, oh my God, was like the least, like, it was like, that was just the beginning. For most people, it's just that instant feeling. And then a few minutes later, everything's fine because they call back or they text. And that was like that feeling of the, oh my God, he's not answering the phone, was just the beginning of like, this is.
And it changes you though. From then on, right? So my foster son is, anyway, I had announced that he had moved out, and he had moved out, and now he had to move back in because of crazy circumstances. But what happens is he didn't have a car, and he had to get a ride home from work, and he was supposed to get a ride home from work at 6:00, and I didn't get home from work until 8:00, and he's not home, and I text. And I go downstairs and I try to find him in his room, and he's not in his room, and he's not anywhere, and he's not answering the texts. And then I'm calling and he's not answering, and his phone had died. He was fine. He was just out with friends. He didn't come in home until 10:15, but he does not understand that he cannot do that to me.
Right.
You know, you are different. When you have had the worst imaginable happen, then those 2 hours for me, from 8:15 to when I got home to 10:15 when he finally came through the door, were unbelievably hard because my mind goes to the bad place right away.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he walks in and I said, I've been worried. You can't do that to me. And he goes, what? I'm like, dude, come on. You lived in this house when this happened. You should understand you can't do that to me. If your phone dies, you need to find somebody else's phone and just send me a quick message. I'm fine. My phone's dead. You can't get a hold of me. Something, it just changes you. You're not the same innocent person that you were before you went through that tragedy.
Yeah, and I'm sure Elina can attest. I have always been of that. I've always had a fear. Every mother has a fear, right? Of the worst case scenario happening to your child, especially when they start driving and they're driving far. And even when Garret was at school, I would still check his location. Like, we have each other's location, and I would check before I go to bed to see, is he at his apartment? Where is he? And there was actually one night last year where he wasn't in his apartment. It was like 1:00 in the morning, and I texted him and I said, where are you? Are you okay? He's like, Mom, I'm just at my friend's house. Are you going to always check up on me even when I'm 26? And I said, yes. And he said, why? And I said, because it gives me comfort. And he was fine with that. And Elina too, like I just look at their location. It's just something that maybe it's a little helicoptering, but as my son would say, but you know what? It's that sense of comfort. And if you don't get that, then your mind wanders. And now with Elina, she understands it though. She understands, and she checks in and she will let me know, I'm going here. I just got here. I'm leaving here. I'm going to go there. So, there is that other level of from her side as well to let me know because of what we've been through. And it really does change you. And, we got to the hospital, and Garret's friend that he was on the phone with was there because she didn't live too far from there. And Garret's roommate, who he was going to meet at Delaware, was also there. So I don't even know how they've processed. I think we're all still processing it a little over a year later, but it will forever change how you live your life, going through that trauma. And it makes you hyper aware of the world around you.
It does. You notice so much more. don't you? When there are other tragedies that have gone on and other things, you just notice them more, and my heart breaks more for them too. And then I think I ever did, because I can feel myself in their shoes a little bit more than before this happened.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I mean, she signed up for all like the news alerts in our area, and like the car accidents before, it was like, oh, that's so sad. Like there was a car accident, and now it's like, oh my God, like I can feel what it's like to get that phone call. Like I know what it's like she knows what it's like to have to go to the hospital and see them. And before it was like, oh, like that's so sad. I hope everyone's okay. And now it's like, oh my God, like that's so like traumatizing. And now it's like almost with every alert, you almost like relive it. Like it's almost like, wow, that was us. Like that was us.
So, yeah, I know. Absolutely. Absolutely. So talk about your kind of grief journeys and how you've handled it differently.
Very different.
Because you have handled it quite differently, the two of you. And I think that's an important thing to talk about how so many ways of grieving can be normal, and that there are, in even the same family, grieving the same person, you can do it quite differently, and to just kind of how that works for you guys.
Yeah. So I was working a part-time job at like a pool. I worked a snack stand at a pool when the accident happened. So during that time. And so obviously the next day, like I called them and told them what happened, that I wouldn't be in, and they told me to take as much time as I needed. But I think after 2 weeks, I went back and I was like, I can't just sit here, and I can't just think about it, and I can't just be sad. Like I needed to do something productive. I think I was still very, very much in shock. I think still sometimes a year later, I'm still in shock.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back and I worked 10 to 6 at the pool, day in and day out. And it was a little hard, especially, I mean, like, because I went to work that day, the day of the accident, and I came home early, and I was with him. So like the drive there and back were kind of a little traumatizing of like, this is where I was that day. And so it was hard, but I couldn't just sit in the house. So I got that job, and then it was a pool summer job. So after that ended probably September, and I started class at a community college online in August, or probably the first week of September. I went back to class and I did my classes, and I had emailed all my professors and told them that what was going on in my situation. But I even, like, my parents had given me the option to take the semester off and to just kind of chill out for a second and get the help that I needed, whether it was like a therapist or anything like that. And I was like, no, like, Garret had actually lost 2 friends in high school. And I was like, with each friend that he lost or we lost, like he never stopped doing anything. If anything, he got more involved. So I was like, I don't want to take a semester off. I don't want to be behind academically. I want to graduate with all my friends, but I also know that Garret wouldn't want me to not go to school. Like he wouldn't want me to take a break. Obviously, he would understand if I needed it, but he wouldn't.
I think that's a good point. I'm glad that you brought that up too, because a lot of people say that to you and say, Andy wouldn't want you to be sad. Andy wouldn't want you to be doing this. I know that, but now you're just making me feel guilty because I really just can't. So, because sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. Exactly. So if you can go back to work and it's super helpful for you to go back to work, go back to work.
Yeah.
But then, Archie, you had a different experience, right?
Much the polar opposite reaction that my brave young girl had. I was paralyzed. I was traumatized and paralyzed. I didn't know what day it was, whether I was coming or going. I didn't want to see anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I'm pretty much sheltered at home. The pandemic for me, as many people as we lost, which was horrible, but going through what we were going through, it was a blessing that I didn't have to leave the house if I didn't, to put a mask on, to go to the store. Like I just didn't want to see anybody. I actually didn't probably really leave the house for the first 3 months. I just was paralyzed. I was just couldn't really fathom what our lives, what we were going through. I was just shocked.
Right.
True shock. And
this can't be happening, right?
yeah,
I just remember that going through my mind again and again and again. This can't be happening. This can't be my life. It just doesn't make sense that it's possible.
Exactly. We had just seen him. We had such a nice dinner with our friends, and all of a sudden he's gone, not coming back through my door, and I was having, I don't want to say nightmares, but I was having some thoughts about what happened to him that night. I wasn't with him. He was alone. So things were going through my head about, did he know? Was he okay? Just my baby,
right.
Just, did he feel anything? Like just those things were going. So for me to have those thoughts and then to go and be a project manager at work, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Even seeing friends, even seeing family was exhausting and fatiguing. And just the idea of having conversations was exhausting and fatiguing. I really literally sheltered. Like I just didn't really want to see. I had a few people that I felt safe with. And that was it. I just couldn't, a couple of good friends, my sister-in-law, just that's it.
I like how you put that you had a couple of people that you felt safe with. That is the key sentence there, because there are people that you just don't feel safe with. You just don't feel like, I don't want them to see me either way. I don't want them to see me completely and utterly devastated and unable to do anything, because that will be weird and uncomfortable. I also don't want them to see me like doing normal things, going to the grocery store and having a smile and laughing, because then do they think everything's okay with me? Because it's not. My world is over. And so anyway, I just feel like there are so many people that you just don't feel comfortable showing any of yourself to at that point.
Exactly.
That's why I really felt most comfortable then around other bereaved parents, because I felt like I could be me around them and they would understand that this is what I was feeling and what I was going through. So,
yeah. And I do have, sadly, I do have some friends who are also bereaved moms and parents and families. And even in those early few weeks, I didn't even feel comfortable speaking with them, just because I think my whole system was just so shut down that just, what do you say? I was just in a whole different place with my whole being at that time. And I will say the support from my friends who were also bereaved parents, the support from my non-bereaved friends and family, so strong, so amazing. I mean, constantly checking in the food, like just always making sure that we knew that they were there. That went a long way, whether it's just a text or a quick pop in, that went a long way. And I had the choice if I wanted to engage or not. And they understood that I wasn't ready for a while. And the patience, I will say that goes a long way. People being patient with you when you're going through this process, because truly, having friends who are bereaved and then actually being in that same position are two different things. Until you're going through it, you can't truly know what someone else is going through. And just that love and that support, it went a long way. And I think that's really what gave me the strength finally to come out of my black hole and show my head a little bit, show my face around, and no judgment, just people understood that I just needed to be alone.
I love that you said the word patience, because I do have a lot of people who listen who are family members or friends of people who have lost their children, and they turn to this to kind of know what to do. So I think that was a key sentence to say there. Just be patient. And when you show that patience, like your friends did to you, and just keep kind of showing up and keep sending the texts and keep reminding that bereaved person that you're still there, then that finally ends up giving you the courage to being able to come out of your shell, because you're thinking they're going to leave. They're going to leave. But when they don't, when months go by and they don't leave, and they're still there, and they're still sending that occasional text or bringing you dinner or asking if they can stop by the store and pick something up for you. When they're still doing those things after weeks and months, then you know.
Yeah, and we live in a very close-knit neighborhood, which I think we're very lucky to live in such a close-knit neighborhood. And during COVID, we had gotten super close. Like everyone was hanging out outside, like in their own kind of yard, but socially distanced and safe. But we got super close, and they still would do that, but they would still send a text, and it was like, we're probably not ready, but there will always be a chair for you when you are. Like, it was like, we still got those invitations. We still got those, like, we're doing this. If you guys would like to come, if you want to stop over. And that I think was really helpful, because it was like, and we live in the same neighborhood. Like, we can see when you guys are doing things. So it was like that text of like, you're still always included. Like, you will still always be included when you're ready. Like, we'd love to have you. That, I think, to me was super helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. To just, I mean, they knew we weren't going to come. I mean, that first month, 2 months, 3 months, like, they knew we were not going to come, but they would text us anyway.
Yeah.
And that's just so precious. So precious to know you're still loved.
We had neighbors making dinner for us for 6 months after. They would bring dinner over every Sunday. Like, it was like, and just because they wanted to.
Because they wanted to, and they all saw Garret grow up, and they all knew Garret and loved Garret as much, as they could as our friends, and they felt the pain that we were going through, and that was their way of being supportive. I think everybody has different ways of the way that they show support. Some people can make food and cook for you, and some people go to the grocery store. Some people send you a quick text. I mean, it's just the amount of support was just incredible. And you really need that. Even though I sheltered and I didn't see anybody, having it was still very critical, because
you could still feel it.
Anything.
Even though you chose to be alone and you chose to take that time to yourself, you could still feel the presence of all of those people. So even though there were times you felt alone, you knew you weren't, right? You knew you were still in community. And that the second you decided to go out that front door, there would be someone waiting for you. So, and that's very different than when you feel completely alone, because I have talked to some bereaved parents who feel completely alone, who really had been abandoned by people they thought they could rely on. And that is so much worse.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't imagine.
Yeah.
It alone.
So you being able to isolate by choice,
right, exactly.
is different. So you eventually, though, did go back to work. You said about 8 months later?
8 months later, I went back. I worked in the pharmaceutical industry. I'm a project manager, and my colleagues, incredible. And they were also part of the people that were checking in on me. It was hard going back, obviously, for many reasons. But because the day that my son came home that night, that Thursday night, I was on a work call till 6. And he's like, Mom, you need to get off your work call. I'm home for the night. Let's go do something. And my work colleagues knew Garret. They knew of Garret. I talked about him all the time. I talked about my kids all the time. So going back and talking, and now having this whole, obviously, life-changing experience and just this tragedy. And I think people were very careful in how we were interacting, and they would let me know that they were keeping me in their thoughts and prayers the whole time, and will continue to. I really just didn't want to talk about anything. So I would kind of just go right into the meeting or just go business as usual, because I just couldn't take myself there. Because if I did, I would need to then log off my call or just not work for the rest of the day. So I kind of would say thank you, and then we would just get right into business. And because I think because I had that time off, it allowed me to kind of get myself ready to get to that point. I didn't want to go to work and just, although I did feel safe with my boss and my colleagues, I just didn't want to be not able to be productive. And I will say my manager, to this day, I'll let her know if I'm having a tough time and I need to log off for a couple of hours. We're not in the office yet, which has been, again, a blessing in disguise through this pandemic. people were still all online. I can log off and go for a walk. I can go, see my daughter at her job for an hour. And it's just nice. I can get that escape and then get back into the work day. And that was one of the conditions I said, I'm just probably going to be I am going to be very different. My work ethic is probably going to be a little bit different. I'm probably not going to be able to work the 10 to 12-hour days I was doing before. And they all understood that. They said, you do absolutely what you need to do. And having that work support from my work family is still going a long way for me. It really is. They were incredible. They made it easy and very welcoming me to come back. And I actually was at a point where I wasn't sure if I wanted to go back. I just was like, just give me a package, let me go. But they actually were saying, you know what, we want you to come back if and when you're ready. We'll be here. And I'm glad I made that decision, because I know, again, as Elina said, and Garret would want me to not just be home, just being sad.
Yeah, that was a big decision for her. I mean, you thought about that for weeks of what should I do and should I go back? And we're not the same people. So to go back to the same job, I think was really hard. But you actually did ultimately decide to go back. And I think
I totally get that. I was home. I mean, initially I went home just after a few weeks, and that was just a disaster. It didn't go well at all. But when I did go back, it's different. You're not the same person that you used to be. And it's hard, I think, sometimes for your coworkers to remember that. You're in a point where it's just been a year now that everyone is still remembering that. But there will be a time when people will kind of start to forget that you are not the same and things are. So just as time goes on, things just change. Things change and new people are hired on and they don't really know what happened to you. And so it's just different.
It is. And that's something that, just thinking about, even in situations. So we got a puppy this last January, and we took a puppy training class, and she's just so sweet. We have a dog, 10 years old, and we got a new puppy. And we took her to a puppy training class. And one of the questions, so we were asking about how do we get the two dogs to get along with each other? And the trainer said, it's like having siblings. And then she looked at Elina and she said, do you have a sibling? And so, of course, Elina was like, well, yes, we lost him in a car accident. So going back to an environment where people don't know you and know your story is sometimes hard. And I've had situations at work already where I've kind of had to say, forgive me, I'm just having a tough day. Or it's somebody new that started and knows of my story and will say, I'm very sorry to hear it. And I don't even know the person, but it was shared amongst colleagues. So it's kind of like, it takes you, kind of throws you off a little bit, but then I appreciate that they're being compassionate. So it's just going into situations that you're just not sure if you're ready. How do you get yourself ready?
Yeah.
But I have to say, people for the most part are very compassionate. Yeah. And
I mean, I just moved to Arizona, so, and actually kind of weird and again bittersweet how it worked out. But so Garret passed away August 14th, 2020, and I left for Arizona August 14th, 2021. So it was like, wow, like a year ago today was a very different day, and now a year later, like I'm starting a whole different chapter. So I mean, I started over. I mean, my boyfriend also is here and just moved to Arizona with me. But I mean, I have all new roommates, all new classes. We had a Zoom call and one of the roommates was like, oh, like, do you guys have siblings? And obviously I knew the question was coming. It's just such a basic question. But I was able to kind of be like, you know what? Like, I know this isn't the answer you guys are expecting. And this is like, we don't have to talk about it and whatever. But I have an older brother. He passed away. And I mean, the reaction, I mean, from adults to people my age, I'm only 20, is like a very different thing. It's like, do they have the emotional maturity to kind of handle like that? I have an older brother who passed away, or am I going to be like the girl whose brother passed away? So it's like, it's very nerve wracking for me to go into a whole new environment. But I will say, like, they were if they didn't know how to handle it, they didn't show it, because they were just kind of like, I'm so sorry. Like, if you ever need to talk about it, and just kind of like moved on. Like, they acknowledged the fact that they obviously don't know what that's like. My one roommate has 2 brothers. My one roommate has 1 brother, and the other roommate's an only child. So it's like they don't know what it's like. They know what it's like to have a brother, but they don't. And I hope they never do.
Right. You don't want them to. You don't want them to at all.
Environment, like, is scary, but it's all like refreshing at the same time, because it's like nobody knows, and I get to tell them what I want them to know. And
so I was going to say, I want to take any point that I can when this kind of topic comes up to bring up something that a recent guest said, that instead of saying, how many children do you have? Or how many brothers and sisters do you have? If you use the phrase, tell me about your family.
Yeah.
It is so much less, it's totally different. You can now tell them about Garret or not tell them about Garret. When you get the question, tell me about your family, because when you get the question, do you have any brothers or sisters? You either say yes, and you want to start to cry because Garret has passed away, or you say no, and then you feel this horrible betrayal, like he didn't even exist. But you don't really want to necessarily go there with someone that you just met, or especially if it's a brief thing that you're going to meet them one time and never again. With your roommates, it's different, right? They're going to learn about this. But if it's somebody that you were just in class with and that question comes up, if you had the question asked of you, tell me about your family, you are free to answer in so many different ways and not feel guilty about how you answer.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, so I just feel like I need to bring that up any chance you can possibly get. And all of us are going to model this. And I'm never asking the question again, how many kids do you have, or how many brothers and sisters do you have? I am always saying, tell me about your family every single time. So if we can spread that, it would be just amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm of the mindset that any chance I can talk about Garret, I will.
Yeah.
I haven't had a moment or a question where that's been asked to me that I wouldn't necessarily, but I could understand where some people, like you said, if it's just a short, brief meeting, you maybe don't want to go there. And I definitely, I feel like I would still want to share about Garret, the fact that I have 2 children, one's in heaven, and just,
Yeah, I also learned through, like, just talking to my counselor and stuff, it's important for me to be able to take control of the conversation.
Yes.
I get to decipher what I tell you about Garret, and I am going to kind of control your reaction and kind of preface it with, yes, this is not a normal answer, so we don't need to talk about it anymore. Don't feel like you need to say anything. And kind of go from there. And I think after I started doing that, people have been a little bit more receptive, because it's like, okay, like, I know that this is not the answer you're expecting. Like, this is not a simple, I have a brother. Like, this is like a big, like, change. Like, this is going to change the way that you look at me. And this is going to change the way, like, you're going to feel sorry.
But it does take a lot of the pressure off that person when you say, I know this is not the answer you expected, but because now they're not forced to think, what do I say? Exactly. What do I say? Because then people feel pressure to sometimes make you feel better or something. I don't know what
or to kind of be like, oh, well, like, we had someone be like, well, like, he's so much more powerful now. And it's like, I guess it depends on how you look at it, maybe, but that's not how I would like him to be.
Right. Or, my dog died last year. Please do not say that. I know how you're feeling. Nope, you don't. So, but if you take that pressure that now they don't feel like they need to do a response, I think that can certainly help as well.
Their reaction, it kind of also, because I struggle with, like, the awkwardness then of the conversation of, like, what are they going to say and how am I going to react to it? So kind of taking away that awkwardness and then being like, I'm so sorry. And then that's it. And it's like, that's the whole conversation. Like, that's all I need. You don't need
That's okay. Yeah, that's okay. So tell me about what you've been doing with Instagram.
So I started an Instagram account. It's called Garret's Sister, because throughout elementary school and probably my whole life I'd had people go, oh, are you Garrett's sister? Like, are you like your Garrett's sister? Yeah, like that was my identity all throughout elementary school, because he was in 5th grade and I was probably in 2nd grade.
Right.
So it's like that was my identity, and that will always be who I am. I mean, all of Garrett knows me as Garrett's sister. So, but it was more about like my, I guess, life after the fact. And kind of how Garret motivated me, losing Garret motivated me to want to do more. Like I kind of felt like I had a choice in my grief. I kind of felt like I could stop doing everything and stop going to school and stop hanging out with my friends and completely change. Or I could lean into that more. I could lean into school more and get more involved. I could hang out with my friends more and do more of what Garret would do. And so I kind of took it as like, grief sucks and losing someone sucks, but the rest of your life does not have to suck. Like everything after that loss doesn't have to be bad. Like there can still be good things. I mean, like that. So we lost him in August, so like that Thanksgiving, that Christmas, like we didn't feel like celebrating anything. But after that, I was like, I want to celebrate these things even more. Like I want to celebrate Garrett's birthday even more. I want to celebrate Christmas bigger than we used to, because Garret was such an enthusiastic person, especially about the holidays. Like he had a list of Halloween movies and Christmas movies that he would watch every single year. Like he decorated his apartment every single holiday. So it was, I kind of took that as like, I want to lean into that more now. Like I don't want to shun these things away and not celebrate things. Like I want to do that more. And so that's kind of like, I just, through my Instagram, want to share that with other people. I feel like there's not a whole lot of resources for siblings. There's not a whole lot of things for siblings. I kind of wanted to.
They're thought of to be the forgotten mourners, is people say all the time, that you just don't pay attention. And people, I'm sure, ask you all the time, how are your mom and dad? You probably get, how are your mom and dad, more often than how are you?
Yeah, for sure. And every so often they'll throw that in at the end, like, oh, how are you? But it's like, well, what am I going to say now after you just talked about my parents for 10 minutes? Like, I'm great. Yeah. What do you want me to say? But yeah, so I just wanted to be something that other siblings could look at and be like, you know what, like, however old you are, when you lose a sibling, like I was 19, like, so for the rest of my life, like, am I just gonna be sad and upset and not want to do anything? And I was like, that wasn't Garret, so that can't be me. So if you, like, you're young, like I'm young, so it's like, I don't to define, like, this is a defining moment, but I don't want this to define the rest of my life.
Yep.
So, and I think kind of leaning into those things has helped me a little bit.
Absolutely.
Has helped me kind of honor Garret and keep going and keep with school and get more involved with school. And like, I think it's different, like, just going to school is going to school, but like, I want to succeed in school. Like, I want to do my best. Like, I feel like I'm still competing with Garret. He got a full ride to law school. Like, I'm probably not going to get a full ride to law school, but you never know. Yeah, I want that Instagram to kind of be a resource and kind of be like a motivation of like, okay, you know what, I can do this too. Like, I can.
Yeah, right. A resource for other bereaved siblings.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Happen to me and make it not suck.
Yeah.
So Archie, you are right now in Arizona, bringing her to school. How, that's just one kind of last question I have for you today is, how is that? How is moving her across the country for you?
It's bittersweet. It really is. I'm on the one hand excited for Elina starting her new journey, her new chapter west. The weather's beautiful here. I think it's just a very nice energy here. I think that she will do very well here, but it's also very sad because she's going to be so far away from me, and obviously going through what we're going through. It's just bittersweet. I think that's the best way to describe it. It's bittersweet. But at the same time, again, with what Elina was saying, with just wanting to live her life in best way that she can and do things that make her find some joy.
Yeah.
I think this is one of them, coming out here, taking this adventure on, furthering her education. She just became a political science major. She has a passion for that. I think she's going to do amazing things. And she's going to take her brother's essence, Garrett's essence, and carry that with her. And I think I'm very proud. I'm a very proud mom. I think she's just one of the most bravest people I've ever met. And so
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. And I do think that it's beautiful that you can be Garrett's sister on Instagram, but I think it will be equally beautiful for you to be in Arizona, not Garrett's sister or Archie's daughter. How are your mom and dad? How's everything going? But to be you.
Yeah. I think if we hadn't lost Garret, I don't know where I'd be, because I was still transferring, but the way Garret lived his life, he went to Spain. He did all the things he wanted to do. I felt this is the time that I can get out of my comfort zone and I can experience something new. And I think that Garret, that's what Garret was about. He always was doing.
Yeah, he inspired you.
Always doing new things. He's still definitely motivating me to do.
Well, thank you so much, ladies, for sharing Garret with us. What an amazing guy. And you are two amazing women. And I loved hearing your different perspectives, because I think that's really valuable for so many of us to hear.
Thank you very much, Marcy.
Thank you for having
us.
Thanks for listening to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. We are always looking for new show ideas. If you'd like to be a guest, know someone who'd be a great guest, or have a show idea, please email us at marcy@andysmom.com. Be sure to visit the webpage, andysmom.com, for more content, including Marcy's blog. There you can also sign up to receive updates via email. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.